Long ago, beyond a forest of silver birch trees, there stood a quiet kingdom beside a winding river. The castle had tall windows, pale stone towers, and gardens filled with lavender, rosemary, and white roses. At night, lanterns glowed along the walls like tiny golden stars. The king and queen loved their peaceful home. Yet there was one joy they had waited many years to know. Then, one spring morning, as birds sang beneath the windows, a daughter was born. They named her Aurora, because her arrival seemed as bright and beautiful as the dawn. To celebrate, the king and queen invited everyone in the kingdom to a great feast. Long tables filled the castle garden. Musicians played gentle melodies. Bakers brought honey cakes, sugared pears, and warm loaves of bread. Among the guests were 12 wise women who lived in distant corners of the kingdom. Each brought a blessing for the child. One wished her patience, another wished her courage. Others gave her kindness, curiosity, laughter, wisdom, and a heart that would always recognize beauty. But just as the final blessing was about to be spoken, the garden grew still. An old woman stood beneath the garden archway. She wore a cloak the color of storm clouds, and her silver hair moved softly in the evening breeze. The king suddenly remembered that she had not received an invitation. She lived alone in the northern hills, and the royal messenger had been unable to find her cottage. The old woman believed she had been forgotten. Her face filled with sadness. "If no place was kept for me," she said, "then I shall leave a gift of my own." She lifted one hand. "Before the princess reaches her 18th birthday, she will prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and fall into an enchanted sleep." The lantern flames trembled. Then the old woman turned and disappeared into the deepening twilight. The last wise woman stepped forward. She could not remove the enchantment completely, but she could soften it. "The princess will not be lost," she said. "She will sleep peacefully. The castle will sleep with her, and after 100 years, the enchantment will fade." The king thanked her, though his heart was heavy. The following morning, he ordered every spinning wheel in the kingdom placed safely in storage. He hoped that, without a spindle nearby, the old woman's prediction could never come true. And for many years, the kingdom remained calm. Aurora grew into a gentle and thoughtful young woman. She loved quiet mornings in the garden. She knew where the robins built their nests and where the first violets appeared each spring. She often carried baskets of herbs to the castle kitchens and read stories to children beneath the pear trees. Although she was a princess, she preferred simple things: the sound of rain on the greenhouse roof, the smell of bread warming in the oven, the glow of the moon reflected in the river. Aurora had heard nothing about the enchantment. Her parents had kept the story secret, hoping she would never need to carry its shadow. As her 18th birthday approached, the castle prepared for a peaceful celebration. Garlands of flowers were woven for the great hall. Lanterns were hung in the courtyard. Musicians practiced a soft evening waltz. On the morning before her birthday, Aurora woke earlier than usual. A pale mist rested over the gardens. While exploring a quiet hallway, she noticed a narrow staircase she had never seen before. The staircase curved upward through a forgotten tower. Aurora climbed slowly, her hand resting on the smooth stone wall. At the top, she found a small wooden door. Beyond it was a round room beneath the highest roof of the castle. Sunlight streamed through a tiny window. Dust floated in the golden beam. Beside the window sat an elderly woman, calmly turning a spinning wheel. Aurora had never seen such a tool. The wheel hummed softly as it turned. "What are you doing?" Aurora asked. "I am spinning flax into thread," the woman replied. She had lived in the tower for many years and had never heard the king's order. Aurora watched the thread winding around the spindle. "May I try?" The old woman smiled and moved aside. Aurora placed one hand near the wheel. The spindle caught the tip of her finger. There was no sharp pain, only a sudden heaviness, like the feeling that comes just before sleep. Aurora looked toward the sunlit window. Then she rested upon a cushioned chair and closed her eyes. At once, the enchantment flowed through the castle. The queen fell asleep while arranging flowers. The king slept beside an open book. Musicians rested their heads beside their instruments. In the kitchen, the baker leaned against a flour sack, still holding a wooden spoon. Dogs curled beneath tables. Horses settled into fresh straw. Even the tiny mice in the walls tucked their noses beneath their tails. Nothing was harmed. Nothing was frightened. The entire castle simply became still. Outside, the garden changed. Rose vines climbed the gates. Ivy covered the walls. Hawthorn and honeysuckle grew thick around the towers. The forest gathered close, forming a green shelter around a sleeping kingdom. Years passed, then decades. Travelers sometimes saw the distant towers above the trees, but the winding paths always led them gently away. Stories spread of a hidden castle where time had paused. Some called it the Castle of Roses. Others called it the Kingdom of Dreams. For 100 years, the castle slept beneath the sun and stars. Spring rain washed the stone towers. Summer fireflies danced among the roses. Autumn leaves gathered across the empty bridge. Winter snow rested gently on the rooftops. Inside the highest tower, Aurora dreamed. She dreamed of walking through lavender fields beneath a silver moon. She dreamed of birds carrying ribbons through the sky. She dreamed of distant bells, soft music, and footsteps slowly returning to the castle. And at last, on a clear morning exactly 100 years after the enchantment began, the forest paths opened. The thorny vines became flowering arches. The trees parted beneath the warm sunlight. A young traveler named Rowan was passing through the valley when he saw the castle. He was not searching for treasure or glory. He simply wondered who tended the roses that bloomed so beautifully in the wild. Rowan crossed the old bridge and entered the castle courtyard. He found everyone sleeping peacefully. He walked through the silent halls until he reached the hidden tower. There, beneath the round window, he found Aurora. As the final moment of the 100th year passed, sunlight touched her face. Aurora opened her eyes. At that same instant, the enchantment lifted. The king looked up from his book. The queen continued arranging her flowers. The musicians raised their heads and began playing the very next notes of their song. In the kitchen, the baker stirred the bowl and wondered why the room had become so quiet. All across the castle, doors opened and laughter returned. Aurora descended the tower stairs beside Rowan. Her parents embraced her beneath the flowering arches of the courtyard. The celebration prepared 100 years earlier finally began. That evening, lanterns glowed throughout the garden. The old instruments played again. Honey cakes were brought from the kitchens, along with warm bread, pears, and fragrant tea. Aurora listened as people described the 100 quiet years. She was not afraid of the time that had passed. She was grateful for the morning that had arrived. In the years that followed, Aurora became a wise and peaceful queen. She kept the old spinning wheel in the tower, not as something to fear, but as a reminder. Every life holds seasons of waiting. Every night, no matter how long, moves gently toward morning. And sometimes rest is not the end of a story. Sometimes it is the quiet place where a new story begins. Late that night, when the final lanterns dimmed, Aurora stood beside her open window. The rose garden shimmered beneath the moon. The river flowed softly beyond the trees. She listened to the peaceful sounds of her awakened kingdom. Then Aurora climbed into bed, pulled the blankets around her, and closed her eyes. This time, no enchantment carried her into sleep, only comfort, only stillness, and the promise of a bright new dawn. Good night.